Hey y'all, so I just wanted to hop on here and do a live for you guys. I don't really get on here and do videos of my personal life because I always keep that private, and I prefer to just keep it under wraps. But I feel like in this time of need that we were facing with this craziness of the coronavirus, that it's only right for me to give a little bit of my backstory. Not all of it, just the parts that matter. When I was 18 months old, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I died on my way to the hospital. They couldn't get a beat within me. I was pretty much pronounced dead once I arrived to the hospital. Mind you, I was 18 months old at this point in time. When I got to the hospital, I was put on life support, and my family didn't think that I would make it through because of the extent of the seizure that I had. I had a grandma seizure, which is the worst type of seizure to have. And then from there, once they got me on, got a beat within me and I was able to breathe on my own, I was released from the hospital, and shortly after I had another grandma seizure, and I died after that one too. It took a tremendous amount of many doctors and researchers and nurses to figure out exactly the issue. Now, we went through some rough doctors that didn't know exactly the root or the depth of seizures. One that I recall saying that all I needed was my butt whooped because all I was having was temper tantrums, which nobody in my family believed that to be true. And we cut ties with that doctor and moved on. We had went through 6 different neurologists before we found what I call the miracle worker. From 18 months old till I was 8 years old, I lived in a very limited life. I couldn't go out in the heat of the day because heat would send me into a seizure. If it got too cold, cold would send me into a seizure. But what triggered most of my seizures the most were sensory things. Flashing lights, loud music, high bass, stuff that those that truly know me probably wouldn't ever think that was a bother to me then. But throughout trials and error of that time of my life, my family tried to give me somewhat of a normal life at that point in time. It wasn't never easy by any means. Nobody truly understood the root and the depths of my struggles or what I was dealing with. I couldn't always, on my bad days, because on my bad days, I would have between 4 to 6 seizures nearly a day. That's including the nighttime. On my good days, I'd probably have maybe 2 to none. It just varied on the medication that they were giving me and how much medication I had, how little medication I had. there was just all sorts of different things that were involved in that triggered my seizures. My future I did not have a vision of my future, what I'm seeing now, by a long shot, by any means. A doctor didn't think I would ever be able to drive. I had many teachers and staff tell me that that I would not be able to handle stress of school and move on into college. There was just a lot of things that stood in my way because of having seizures. And I guess maybe maybe I was born with it, but there was this fire within me that I absolutely refused to be conformed to what this idea of what people thought my life was going to end up being. And till this day, at 30 years old, I'm still having to prove. But now I'm not having to prove to the world as much as I am myself. And I don't beat myself up for that. But I am pretty damn proud of myself and how much I've went through to get to where I'm at today. But I'll never forget the day I went to see my neurologist. To have a consultation with him about being a candidate for brain surgery. Mind you, I was 8 years old when I became a candidate for brain surgery. Brain surgery was nothing compared to what it is today in the medical world. Nothing. There was a lot of risk that was at stake if my family chose to go through, accepted me having brain surgery. But between my family and medical staff, it was pretty much it was my last resort. There was pretty much no more hope of me being able to get through or to see life without seizures if nobody accepted or wanted me to have brain surgery. So after consultation, all paperwork got sent up to UAB, University of Alabama in Birmingham. They checked my background, they did all my paperwork, checked all my documentations and everything. We had made many trips up there for them to have all up-to-date information. We had to go up there for EKGs, MRIs, EEGs, you name it, we had to go up there for it. And that was pretty much my life, even dealing with seizures. I mean, not only did I have to do all of that pretty much on a 3 to 6 month basis, but I also had to go do lab work on a monthly basis to make sure everything was going right with my body. So when the day came to have the surgery, it was a very scary day, to say the very least. On the night of July 28th, we were sitting in the in the hotel room on the night before the surgery. And my favorite preacher, who had moved from my local church in Chickasaw to a church up in Birmingham, which just so happened to be right there close to the hospital in the hotel room where we were staying at. Him and his wife came and paid a visit. And I had a sit-down conversation with him. And talking about the risk of what tomorrow was going to bring and what the outcome could have possibly been, and what the possibility could be. And I told him, I said, Brother Engelbert, I said, I know this is probably not words that you want to hear from a 8-year-old child. I said, but I have lived out my life the way that I wanted to up to this point. I said, if the good Lord wants to call me home tomorrow, then I'm going to go home tomorrow. I said I accept my fate in this. And if I see the other side of it, then I'll be just as happy. And in that moment, it was just me and my preacher talking about that. And he told me, he said, you're the only 8-year-old girl, as strong as you are, and as resilient as you are, to ever say those words. He said, I never want to hear them from another 8-year-old. And I said, I hope you never have to. Well, him and his wife, they sat around, and they sat around, we had conversation, we talked or whatever. After our conversation, he, right before he left, he gave me a prayer cloth, which I still have to this day. And I slept with that prayer cloth the night before. And I kept it with me all the way throughout pre-op. And I can't remember who I gave it to while I was being pulled back, or before I was pulled back to the OR. But waking up the morning of surgery, I had a peaceful feeling come over me. I was okay. I was very tired. I remember me and my mom had gotten up and she had gave me a bath, because we had to be at pre-op. We had to be at the hospital by 6 o'clock for pre-op. And my mom was giving me a bath, and I was sitting there having a conversation with her. And which I don't remember what that conversation was, but it was just a moment for me and my mother. Anyways, I get taken to the hospital. I get put in pre-op, whatever. They run all the blood work and get me ready. Now there is light in the midst after this, I promise. And my point will be proven in the midst of all of this. When I was sitting in the OR room, my nails had just been painted. And most hospitals with protocol and regulations, they don't allow nail polish in the OR due to the chemicals that is put in nail polish. But I begged nurses and doctors to just leave my nail polish on. That's all I wanted. I just wanted my nails to be pretty while I was in surgery. And they allowed me to have my nail polish, or keep my nail polish on. And long before anesthesia even got put in me, I was tired. All I wanted was to go to sleep. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I asked my mom and I asked doctors if I could go to sleep. And they said, maybe if you feel like going to sleep now, go right on ahead. Mind you, this was before anesthesia. I didn't have no anesthesia in me whatsoever. I was like, okay. And I went on to sleep. I slept all the way through surgery. I never woke up. And they rolled me back, I think it was 10 o'clock. I think that's what my family's always told, or what my family's told me. Anyways. And that was it. I was in the OR for 4 hours. And I'm sure it was a very long 4 hours for my family. But I sought through this. When I woke up from the anesthesia, the first thing that I felt was my catheter. That catheter was so painful. And it's a pain that I'll never forget. I never want no child to ever have to deal with a catheter. Not an 8-year-old. And I definitely don't want to deal with another catheter in my life. I'm just saying, because I've already had that experience. I don't want it no more. But before surgery, the high risk that I would be risking was my vision, short-term memory loss, my speech, and my mobility. And at the time, me and my grandfather, we always had a thing when it came to a wink. And that was something that he asked me to do before surgery, after surgery. So I get out of surgery. I'm crying because catheter's killing me. And my mama was sitting right there beside me. If I remember right, she was hovered and completely laid over me. But I got put in recovery, and I had my family surrounded me at the time, and I was still out of it from the anesthesia. And I looked over at my papa, and all I told him was I didn't feel like giving him the wink. And that's all the doctors and all he needed to know. Because I remembered that before surgery. And I was able to see, and I didn't lose any of my functions of my body. None whatsoever. So that was God's blessing, number one. Well, actually, his blessing was me seeing through this and living through to tell this story. 2 was I didn't lose any of my high risk other than parts of my short-term memory loss that I still suffer with to an extent today. But my point in this part of my story is to not for sympathy, not for attention, not for any other rhyme or reason than to let the world know that there is still a little bit of resilience in this nation, me to be included, who is not afraid of the coronavirus. All right? I have no fear whatsoever when it comes to any sickness that swipes through this great nation. Because let me tell you, if the good Lord wanted to call me home, He would have called me home that day. I'm just saying. I don't live in fear. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm quite fearless, as most people will probably know that about me. And I think what this world probably needs just a little bit is a little bit of faith and a little bit of resilience to see through this craziness, this chaos that's going on right now, because there's a lot of people in this nation who has been through so much worse. And I know quite a few people that has been through worse than me. But let me tell you, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of anything other than roaches. I am pretty afraid of roaches. And being forgotten. But that's all I wanted to get on here and tell you guys. And just to put in a little bit of perspective, if I can live through 152 staples that you see in my head after surgery, plus the immense amount of pain that I went through after surgery, then you probably would understand why I am not afraid of this damn coronavirus or any other sickness that comes through. I don't live in fear. I don't live in fear by the media, and I'm not going to. Never have, and I never will. Because devil likes fear. And I'm not here to preach about faith or religion, spirituality, or anything. That's not what this is for. But the more fear that you create, the more that you are feeding to the devil. So, all I want to prove and to say is just have a little bit of faith and have a little bit of strength that we will see through this. Because there's been people that has been through a hell of a lot worse. And this sickness is absolutely nothing compared to just a little bit of what others are going through or have been through. But that's it. That's all I wanted to say.